Is Lovely having some internet issues?
No, I don't think she's here.
Alright, she keeps going out and coming back in.
Oh yeah, she just said she has something weird going on with Vent.
Ah, it's okay, Carol. You can step up and lead this, right?
Oh no.
I bet you could.
I nominate Joel. Okay, we're just gonna give this a couple minutes while Lovely sorts out her Vent. Um, and give time for people to get on the channel.
Are you streaming now? Are you live?
Yep.
You didn't even give us a 3, 2, 1 count? Come on.
I don't.
Amateur hour, Carol. You gotta tell us these things.
What level do I get stun at?
Okay, this is why I have 10,000 computers. I don't know what's going on with my laptop, but it will not let me connect Vent. Can you guys hear me?
Sure
Yeah, I hear
can.
you fine.
No.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you guys this question and then what time do you want to start? Maybe another 5 minutes, Beebs?
It's live now.
Okay, so what it says is cannot transmit because the program has not successfully opened a sound input device. And I've checked all my settings on that thing. Absolutely nothing has changed. I don't know what I should have pushed. Anybody know what that is?
Yeah, your default sound device is it's wanting a change, which is the reason why it's not working. Either I have to go into the Windows device manager, sound manager and change it, or into Ventrilo setup and change it.
Okay, well in Vent it says the Sennheiser headsets, so it must be right in Vent. So at any rate, I'll use this Vent instead. And I guess are we ready, Beep?
Yeah. Well, I'm just leveling away, like, so you do your thing.
Yes, lovely. We are live right now.
Okay, well, I'm just going to be different and do this over here. I can't type from where I'm at, so if anybody wants to respond by typing to people in the chat, that would be great. So we will officially get this thing going.
How do I get into that chat?
Do you have a user ID on the Twitch channel?
No, I guess I don't. I'm logged into the game, so I wasn't sure how that worked.
Okay, well, if I see a question or something come up, I'll read it out loud and you can just respond by speaking. You don't have to type.
Sounds good.
Okay, I see questions already. We are ready to go. So hello everybody, happy Valentine's Day and welcome to the Dark Age of Camelot Nights podcast. My name is Lovely and tonight we're going to be discussing 3 of the 7 healing classes available in the game. Excuse me. The classes up for discussion tonight are Cleric, Druid, and Shaman. We're actually going to have a second podcast for the remaining healing classes on March 13th. We're going to discuss the Friars, Wardens, Bards, and Healers. I have a few people signed up, but if folks would like to sign up for this, you can do it on post count. Send Beebs a private message on post count, or you can contact me in the game, and I'll put your name down. So I'm very pleased that tonight we do have some players that stepped up and they're going to help us discuss these 3 classes. So I'm going to get started and let them introduce themselves and what class they're going to be talking about. We'll just go in alphabetical order through the vent channel. So I'm going to start with Alf, please.
Hello, my name is Elf. I play a cleric. My spec.
Okay, Flick.
Yellow. Name is Flick on postcount, but more commonly known as Tom. I play most classes, and like most people, I play this game for a long time. And I am representing the Druid class today.
Awesome. Joel?
Yeah, I played this game for a long time, mostly very poorly, and I'm here to be talking about the Shaman class. And I guess, yeah, did you have any other questions? I'm sorry, Lovely, I had to step aside for a second.
No, I was just getting folks to introduce themselves and just say which class you're going to be talking about the most. So you're fine. Ko's up next. Ko is a fellow knight.
Hey, I love healing classes really. I play a lot. I've been on my healer mostly, and I like high mend, high reg specs for the most part, and really fun fight here in Brefine for anyone who's either on the alb or mids right now.
Who's winning, by the way?
The albs just they didn't time it right. Otherwise, I think they had everyone mez to begin with, but there's a lot of mids on tonight, so the mids ended up taking it.
Boo. No, I'm sorry. I didn't say that, did I? Mac, you're up.
Hi, my name's Mac. I'm here representing the other cleric class. I run the same spec as Elf does, 40 enhanced, 36 rejuve, but I have 3 other clerics that also run 3 other different specs, but my main is Mixeric, and that's the spec he runs. I've been playing for probably 8 or 9 years now, mostly healer classes.
Oh, glutton for punishment. You also play Mac Mez, yeah?
Yes, I also play Macmez the Sork and Roland the Friar.
And Tanky.
Hey everyone, my name is Tanky. Play a RR11 Shaman. I got about 6-7 years on Al with every tune over there. And since Classic, I've been on mid. My main over here is Tanky Shaman. Um, my current spec right now is 44 AUG, 31 Mend. I've also been the 39-36 split spec. So right now I'm just here to represent the secondary half of Shamans.
Great, thank you. Okay, um, we were talking a little bit about this before we actually went live, and in my opinion, the healing classes are actually some of the hardest classes to play in the game. Not necessarily because of the technical aspect, but in my experience, when you play a cleric, you're responsible not only for your own tune, but you're responsible for 7 other people. Let me just see. Somebody said we're really low. Is that true, or is that just one person that can't hear us? Can everybody else hear us okay? Yes? No? Okay, I don't see any other comments. So anyway, the healing classes are really, really hard. You've got to keep your group window open. You've got to make sure you're keeping these people alive. They're running off in the weeds and so on. They're really the true support classes in the game. Uh, so let's start with some basics with you guys. Um, what are your preferred play styles? Uh, we'll just divide it into solo. We'll put together small man and 8-man, and then Zerg play style. Again, I'll just go through and ask each of you. Alf, what do you normally play?
I normally play small man or 8-man. I have done a little bit of solo as a enhanced rejuve friar, not much. I actually prefer the small man 8-man um, style of playing. A lot more into it. Got to pay attention a lot more. People running around, like you said, in and out of heal range, keeping everybody alive, shearing. It's fun.
Flick, what about you?
I've tried everything out at one point or another, but these days mostly 8v8 oriented.
And how's that action? Is it easy or hard to find 8v8 action?
I think it's gotten better since the new changes with Alan Bannon. It's well, it depends on the night, but it can be easier to find groups than it used to be. I like it.
Oh, good, good. Um, Co, when you're playing, what's your preferred play style, or do you do it all?
Well, well, honestly, I prefer 8-man, but just with real life, everyone's situation changes over the years. So that for the past year or two, I've really been just zerging it up because it's really easy. I log on at 7 p.m. and 7 to 10. I always know I've got friends who are going to be on there. So, and there is something to be said for just helping the realm, and you can sort of mix with a wide variety of play styles and play levels, and I think it's really, especially as a knight, it's really good just to help out newer players, and you can be more maybe for the realm than you can if you're just with 7 buddies. So.
And do you play all 3 realms, or do you like have a preference? Just whatever you feel like that night, or?
For the past year and a half, really, I've been switching between Alb and mid just based on whichever side I think is not doing as well. So,
Mac, what about you?
I go 3 different ways. I play small man quite a bit. I do a lot of 8-man. And then usually Friday, Saturday nights, and occasionally Wednesday nights, I have a kind of a set group that we run with the Zerg. And I enjoy all 3. Each has its benefits and drawbacks, but if you play a healer class, it's all the same. I don't care which one of the 3 you're playing. There's just a lot that goes into it, in my opinion.
And last, Tanky.
For the most part, I guess I Zerg. During the day, probably 8v8. I never solo with this guy. I don't believe in the 47 cave go solo spec kind of thing. I'm always the support class, so that's why I play it. So yeah.
So I'm just going to go off in the weeds a little bit. What about soloing on healing classes? What do you guys think of that? Is it doable, or is it really difficult? I'm just going to go out of order here. Joel, what do you think?
I think you've seen examples of it in the past. I think it's something that's going to take a while to kill anybody. Whether that's conducive to the environment that currently exists in Dark Age for the most part, I don't know. I think you'd be a little bit masochistic trying to do it as a regular playstyle, but I mean, I've seen people do very well on shamans and druids. I guess clerics too, but maybe not as much. But yeah, shaman's got all the tools for it if you have the patience. I don't know what's optimal, but you certainly have the tools.
And when we talk about a solo shaman, would you be solo as in by yourself, the way we see stealthers out there by themselves, or solo in a Zerg?
Well, those would be completely different approaches. If you're solo in a Zerg, you're there for RPs and you're shearing and waiting for other people to die. I mean, I guess you could AoE dot and dot stuff, but I don't know that that would be the most productive use of your time, unless it's just fun for you to do so. I'm talking running around solo, like you would some of the stealthers claim that they do, and using abilities that way. Because you make a lot of RPs if you're by yourself in the Zerg, but I would say that's a different concept and game style than solo as a lot of people would understand it.
Yeah, we have a cleric. I'm gonna throw Bobo out here, Bobonic, and he's part of our intel network actually, and he's a solo cleric, and he is out there just going like crazy, and I'm quite surprised to see that, like a true solo player. I wouldn't have thought a cleric would be super successful at that, but he actually does quite well. Um, what about you, Alf? What do you think of solo cleric?
Solo cleric. I mean, like I said, I've done it a couple, three, four, five, six times, going out there, running around keeps, shearing, trying to kill, and like somebody else said, yes, it takes a long time, especially on my spec. But I have fun doing it. It's how how long can I stay alive while somebody's trying to kill me? I have fun doing it.
So some of you mentioned your specs. I'm just going to go through maybe for some of the players that are not really aware of the rights. I hate to use the term the right specs. I guess it would be acceptable specs for certain types of play. Um, so let's start with Mac. What are the acceptable, if you will, types of specs for clerics for to get grouped, for instance? Yeah, I know 8-man is a little bit different. I don't know, is the specking as popular, 42 enhance for the red brain? Does that really matter anymore?
Yep, it's the go-to.
Okay.
It's pretty much as he said. It is the go-to, especially if you're running a caster heavy group. You want the extra intel because that in turn assists them with their damage. Uh, if I'm running with a tank group, 8-man, I'll run. Like I said, I have 2 clerics, so I don't have to change bars. I've got one set 42, 33, 42 enhanced, 33 rejuve. The other's 40 enhanced, 36 rejuve. And if I'm running a tank group, that's the one I'll running in a tank group. That's the one I'll run. Supremacy pots, though, have kind of taken away from that a little bit, and actually, the intel out of a supremacy pot is higher than a 42 enhance cleric.
And what about for smite clerics? I was told 47 smite, 26 rejuve. Is that fair for a smite cleric?
That would be a decent spec for a smite cleric, especially if you get a buff bot. Uh, I don't remember the exact numbers, but some smiters run a tri-spec, which is they try to get some of the some enhance in, as well as rejuve and smite.
And anybody can jump in here. What are some good specs for druids?
Well, the go-to druid spec is very similar to the cleric one, 42 enhance for the red brain. But I wouldn't say it's the most powerful spec, because once you get some higher rank, you can drop regrowth as well as nurture and get the level 20 nature pet. And that's when Druid really gets fun to play. You do lose a greater heal doing this, which is why you need a high rank to compensate with some healing passives, but the pet is well worth it.
And I see one here, he's saying 47 rest rejuve. And we have a 50 nurture.
No, that's the most common Druid spec, I would say, on the server.
Now, why would you want to go 50 nurture? What
He's
makes
being
that?
sarcastic. He's meaning
It's a
for
buff
bots.
bot.
Oh. Oh, see, I told you guys I was so easy to troll. I am easy to troll.
It's that dry Scandinavian wit. It's that dry Scandinavian wit.
That's so funny. And what about a shaman? 44 AUG. What else?
I would say
Yeah,
you're gonna
most
wanna
people will go 44 for standard, because that's the last resistance, and it's pretty much common. That's where you stop. You get the heat, cold, matter. The 31 is where you stop at. You can either go matter. I'm sorry. You can either go cave for the fart disease and AoE roots, or 31 men for the heals. Most people go heal just for group support.
Okay, so we kind of have some very tried and true specs and stuff. Do any of you guys play any other specs? And if you do, is there a reason for it?
Yeah, I think the shaman spec I see a lot of people going is 44 AUG, and then you get 17 cave for the PvAE instant disease, which is one of the last remaining real advantages of the shaman, and then you get 26 mending, which is the group heal, which is a pretty solid spec for the class. And there is a small man spec too, where you drop men or AUG to 39, I believe, and then you can get 31 mending and the cave. I would say that's more appropriate for small men because you get the better greater heal.
Yeah, if I may caveat on Joel here, he's right. The other side that people will play for shamans, but you really got to have some decent R behind it for the passives, is 39 AUG and 37 cave. Gives you a split spec. You lose all your mending, but you get the single target shears, but you get all the yellows, everything yellow.
Okay, and then I was told that the two old school specs would be running 2 druids with 30 regrowth, 44 nature, 39 regrowth, 37 nature. Do 8-man still do that? 2 druids for that?
There are some setups that do run 2 druids.
Is that optimal or not?
Yeah, it can be really good. Usually you still include a warden, but you make him a peeling role or battle master. But I don't know if you would spec that way. You would probably still go with the spec I mentioned with 20 nature pet or the level 12 nature pet.
Okay. So
And
now we're going to get into... Go ahead.
On rare occasions, you'll see a nature druid as one of the druids when you do run 2 of them. But even to this day, with all the CL buffs and all the supremacy pots, even to this day, it's hard to justify that it's worth it.
Now, if you're, I think, let me see if I can get this worded right. Actually, let me start with this. This is going to be a little more difficult. What are the strengths of each of your classes in the game now? So what we want to talk about is what's really good about your class that just doesn't need any kind of fixing, in your opinion. And anybody can start speaking.
Let me start with healer because, I mean, I think it's the least touched class in the last 10 years. I think healers have insane. Sorry.
I'm having you come back for the healer day. We're just going to do clerics, druids, shaman today.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I just nabbed you for March 13th. Write that down. Go ahead on any of those, though, Co. Go ahead on any of those that you think is, like, really strong.
So clerics, right? That's one of the ones.
You
'Cause
bet.
so clerics to me are super strong because one of the issues, especially in the Zerg, that I see is people get bored. And when you've got a high RR class that maybe you've been playing for a long time and everyone loves that you play it, well, you end up wanting to do something else. And so people, actually I think people end up going away from the game. But I think Cleric is one of the very few classes that can be both support and a pure smiter. So, and I can, a bunch of different Caster Troy, for example, clerics have gone the gamut and have really, explored their class in a new way. And I would say shamans are like not quite there maybe because they don't have that pure DPS spec that a smiter will have. So
Agreed.
Clerics, what do you think? Do you think we're pretty good the way we are on clerics?
In some aspects, like I said, I run 40 enhanced, 36 rejuve. So I get decent heals, decent instas, good buffs, and good shears. Doesn't leave me a lot left to put in anything into smite. So running that spec, I don't have a lot of offense defense capability, comparatively speaking.
And what about the strengths for druids? What's really good about druids?
Definitely the pet does a lot of carrying. I would rank druids the strongest out of these three classes, and cleric second, not too far behind, and shaman behind those.
And now the opposite. What are the weaknesses of these classes and what lines or spells or anything you think needs some serious improving? What are some ideas? I'm
I
going to
mean,
make
I'm
Joel
happy
go.
to. Yeah, sure. I think the biggest issue with shamans that we're seeing is we've spent almost the entirety of Dark Age with it being a given that shamans are a necessity in groups, and now because of some evolution in the game meta, they're not really a necessity. They're an option, and they're not an optimal option a lot of the time. Um, I think the biggest weakness for a shaman is that it's a tweener. Like, it doesn't do anything particularly well. On paper, it looks like it could be a really cool class, but when you break it down and you get into the nitty gritty and details of it, it doesn't offer above like a utility or damage or heals above and beyond other options. So yes, it has a competitive edge. Like it's not going to be a detriment to the group, but its comparative advantage has been eroded very, very slowly over the years, especially now with the addition of CL buffs, supremacy, etc., etc. So what do you do with a shaman? I think it's the biggest weakness of the class is you sit there scratching your head and you wonder, well, what should this thing be doing? Should it be interrupting? Should it be healing? Shears are certainly vitiated in their effectiveness. I think that's the biggest weakness is the class needs a bit of a facelift.
So how would you do that? What would you change as a shaman to make it more group friendly?
I don't think
If I
it's
may,
unfriendly. Sorry, go ahead.
no. I'm trying to back you up, Fran. That's all I'm doing here. I agree with him completely. In Classic, Shaman's had a job, and that was to buff and to do its job. Right now in the state of the game, we have supremacy pots, we have endurance pots, we have hero pots, we have realm buffs. Shaman has lost its primary role, and now we're there to shear, but as soon as you shear, they can pop a pot. You can disease, but that can be cleared up with all the things that's in the game as well. And like Joel's saying, we've kind of lost ourselves. Most people when they group me, even at my realm rank, they don't really want anything. They don't, except for resist, and Even that's not even the greatest in the world. So yeah, you can get to 24% resist on fire, cold, and matter, but um, aside from that, the shears, you have to spec extremely high for the AoE shears. Cave just offers nothing really except for the PBOE, but even that, if it was me, and some people have said that maybe a couple more spec points to allow us a little bit more spread with the with our choices, so we can do a little bit more. Cave is just lacking. There's not much there. With clerics that have smite and they have baseline stun, druids have the pet. With shamans we just don't have anything, and I think that's kind of our problem is we don't bring much to the group and we have no defense.
So would you think tweaking your current lines, moving things from one line to a different line, what do you think would help that?
I mean, it comes down to whether you would like the shaman to be an indispensable class or a nice class to have in a group. And I think we're moving to a point where it's not going to be an indispensable class. There's only, maybe 2 or 3 classes per realm that you're kind of almost pigeonholed into running. And at the moment, Shaman is certainly not one of those classes, whereas it once was. So we're looking at the class that's not really optimal, but is that necessarily a terrible thing? I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not really here to be advocating for the class. Yes, it could certainly use some interesting additions in order to make it a bit more fun to play. And perhaps there are some things that are currently on other mid classes that could be moved to shamans that would help them. And it would be nice if the shaman could contribute, because it's an easy target. It has very little defense. It has an instant interrupt, which is a very small radius, and so there's a lot of reasons not to run the class, but that's true of almost every class in the game as well. But you could give the shaman a few abilities here and there that would certainly make it an attractive option given the right circumstances.
So in the past, what was the shaman's base role? Like, why did you want a shaman in your class? Was it strictly for buffs?
Well, you had buffs, you had endo, you had shears, disease, but as you can see, those things are not, like, everybody can run endopots and endomatherians now. You don't need the shaman endo. Buffs, you don't need the shaman for rebuffs because you can run supremacy pots or CL buffs. Shears, everybody's running CL buffs or supremacy pots. They've lost their effectiveness. Root, it has a ton of other classes that can root. So you have all these things the shaman can do, but if you put another class in there instead of the shaman, those abilities are still in your group, but you also get the advantages that other class would bring. So it's not like it's a bad class, it's just that your opportunity cost of running a shaman has increased, I guess would be the best way of saying it.
Yeah, the class is dated, to be the best way to put it. We're lost. We were something back in Classic. We were something back when we all merged. But with the addition of all the pots and potions that are available, shamans don't really bring much to the table anymore. And our healing is really not really that spectacular.
Yeah, kind of to
see,
piggyback on that, I think what separates a shaman from druids and clerics is really the RAs that they don't have access to, and then also those instas, like you just alluded to. And I think the clerics and druids are in the same boat as far as the shearing and the supremacy pots and the CL buffs and all that, but they can fall back on higher other specs, higher reduce specs or whatever, and just access things that actually help their group a little bit more. But shamans really don't have that option. So
It's become more of a convenience feature than an effective class. It's like an automatic transmission. Yeah, it's a pain to drive a manual in traffic, but if you're a good driver, you can drive better with a manual, And it's the same kind of principle with the shaman. Yeah, it's nice that you have buffs and endo and all that stuff, but if you really want to try hard, you can get around it very easily and have a more effective class in that spot.
so kind of the fact that a shaman used to be or is still very high in utility, those utilities can now be overcome by the different things available in the game. That's kind of what you're saying, right? Whereas a cleric, for instance, is very specialized. You have to have a cleric healing. So even if you took away buffing and shearing and doing everything else, you still need it for healing, whereas the shaman's healing just isn't good enough. Yeah? Is that what you're kind of alluding to? Because
Yeah,
I think I think throughout the game, we're not talking about minis, but everybody knows my main tune and mean tune is a mini. And, when they gave mini speed to everybody, all of a sudden you're kind of going, well, so much for me being the speed class, but you still have other things to fall back on. So the shaman really doesn't have anything that a group necessarily has to have to fall back on, correct?
Yeah, but that goes back to that debate of whether you want the class to be indispensable or an attractive option. And there are so few classes that are indispensable, and I don't know that it's fair, because the game has to evolve in terms of the meta, right? People want to do different stuff and get different abilities and have different classes in the group. I mean, there are plenty of classes. You could pretty well make the argument almost any class on mid, other than maybe a healer, is not necessary to run in a group. You can find other things for it. There are some that are optimal, but that doesn't mean that they're necessary. So what I guess that's what they need to define if they're going to balance the class, so quote unquote balance, is whether the class is determined to be indispensable or an attractive option, because those are very different things.
Yeah, and I think as far as making classes indispensable, uh, it's pretty rough when you have that. You know, I can speak to clerics. If you don't have a cleric in your group, you don't have a group. Like you will die, even in a Zerg. It doesn't matter. So indispensable. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Do you want to have classes that are absolutely indispensable? Not necessarily a good thing.
And you said it best, Lovely. Someone mentioned it here in chat, and they're exactly right. These classes that we're comparing right now, all of them have spread heal and spec mending, whereas, shamans really don't. Even if you spec high and gimp everything else, you're really not going to out heal a Volk. And people would rather have that for the AoE shears and the damage they bring and the instas and utilities that they bring versus a shaman. And the only reason a shaman gets grouped nowadays is for either the resistances that they cast or just because people know who they are and, like, all right, hey, dude, you're part of the guild, we'll bring you in.
Yeah, and some of the issues too is, oh, I got a text message. Some of the issues too is when they do make a class indispensable, necessary for a group, you also confine that class to playing the exact spec that is necessary. So I'll use Alb as an example. We don't, for the most part, group a smite cleric because a wizard would be better at killing stuff than a smiter. If your cleric is smiting things, they're not healing you, so you don't want them in your group. And it ends up crippling it where everybody has to have the same cookie cutter thing. You have to be doing the exact same thing. Sometimes that's just not a good thing.
Well, I just said the exact same thing that I was commenting on you as well. Just like you said, no one runs a smite cleric, no one runs a cave shaman. The AoE dot is just going to piss somebody off. It's really not going to do any damage whatsoever. Even at high realm rank, I've tested this with thousands of realm points. Wall power 9, MOM 9, acuity 8. And, my AoE dots, because we don't have that buff, will only do about 140, maybe 150 on a support class like a caster cloth. But on a tank, you might as well hang it up. So the damage is not there. No one wants a cave shaman.
Because there's something else that's going to be better. And so why take this guy that's not great at it? You pick up a different class that's going to be better. And I see somebody up here said, I smite in an 8-man and do well. I'm sure you do if you have an 8-man that accepts that. We get into this discussion all the time when we're trying to put together groups. People will ask, what's your spec? And if you have a spec that the rest of the group doesn't want, they just won't group you. Like if it's not deemed something that's going to be useful to the group, they're not going to group you. That's just the way people are.
And I think also, Lovely, speaking to the Cleric and Smite in particular, a couple of patches ago they changed Smite so that they took the heal component out of the Smite damage part of the line, and that crippled their chances of getting a group even more.
That was actually that's perfect that you just said that. That was going to be my next question. There have been some changes, obviously, in 14 years, but what are some of the biggest changes that have occurred to your classes that have been good or bad for the class, if you wouldn't mind discussing that? That heal thing has come up frequently because that's, that was a huge thing. It was deemed to be overpowered at the time. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's because of its removal, that particular spec is no longer welcome. So what do you guys think? What in the past has come away from your class or been given to your class that's helped or hindered it? Anybody?
Let me start with Druid real quick. And this is kind of weird and off the wall, but personally I feel like the Warden changes have affected Druids the most, because someone who wants to spec high heals in Druid in a group, well, people are kind of like, well, why don't we, we've got the 50 Warden already, so you've got a different role, and we want you to play that role instead of your high heal role, so.
And then, of course, all the pots that people have talked about, that's had a huge impact on healing classes.
That has, as well as you're seeing a lot more on Alb. You're seeing a lot more Rejuve Friars. They're a bit power hungry. I also play a Rejuve Friar, but they can, other than not having the instas, they can heal just as well, and in some cases better than a Cleric. They offer different set of resists, and it's got to the point now where you're seeing, you used to see a lot of groups where they take a Staff Friar for the peels, but now they're looking for a Rejuve Friar and replacing that second Cleric with a Rejuve Friar, so you're kind of narrowing the need there again for for Clerics, and that's kind of boosting one class has kind of hurt another class. And there again, as I stated before, the Smite taking the heal component hurt a Cleric from the Smite line, hurt a Cleric all the way around from the solo aspect, small man, 8-man, and Zerg. You weren't getting heals on yourself when you were soloing anymore. It took any reason. If they were Smite Rejuve, you might consider taking them, because even if they were smiting away, the group was getting some benefit out of the Smite, and now they're not. So my Smiter sits on the shelf collecting dust.
Now, I'm just scrolling up a little bit. Gavin mentioned the biggest change, in his opinion, is the change to power. What do you guys think of that?
I'm not
basically unlimited.
I kind of agree with him, but I'm trying to wrap my head around his line of thinking, and that certainly has changed things. But I'm trying to. I mean, I guess the fact that a Friar can go that high of Rejuve and still spam that 41 greater heal, or the Warden can. I guess that's what he's driving at, and that is, I suppose that is a big change, because they can sit back there and greater heal, and that kind of moves the Cleric and Druid's primary role from being the healer to being more of a utility class than a healing class. I'm guessing that's what you're driving at, Gavin.
It could be. I do know that my current Friar temp, I have a 50 power pool, 20 siphon, and 25 power regen, plus the 25 to heals Toa bonus. So he's a little bit more power hungry, but with some of the otherworldly items, I've also got 3 items that proc power, in addition to having a little bit more power regen than my Cleric does and a higher power pool. So given the two, there are nights that I prefer to play my Rejuve Friar. I can do just as well, even though it's a little bit more power hungry.
Yeah, Rad's saying that we're getting off topic. We're kind of a little off topic, but not really. We were talking about power and that, and different things that have affected the classes that we are talking about, and the power thing I think does make a difference because we regularly run a normal cleric spec and a rejuve friar, and we do just fine. So even though we're not talking about friars specifically, that does have an effect on whether another cleric is going to get a group. We actually prefer having cleric and friar together in a group because of the resists it brings to the table. So it does have an effect.
I absolutely agree. The changes that have affected shamans and druids and clerics as well have not been to the classes themselves, but to other things in the game that have either reduced or made reduced in effectiveness or made redundant some or all of their abilities. So other things like shamans, I mean, there have been some changes and nerfs to the class. I guess ditto with druids and clerics, but most of the major impacts on the classes have been a result of changes that had, on paper, nothing to do with those three classes.
So with the advent of supremacy pots, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm going to pick on those because everybody was affected. These three tunes were affected by those. So what is it, a good thing or a bad thing? I think personally, because I'm kind of lazy, I think it's a great thing. People are always screaming for their buffs and stuff. They're never in line of sight. They're off in the weeds somewhere. So I just yell at them, pop a pot. Works great. I see somebody that says pots are insanely bad. What do you guys think? Good or bad? Bad, bad, bad.
No, that was me, Lovely. We commented this on earlier. Joel actually said it, and I believe Co and Mac even might have said it. The supremacy pots have pretty much neutered the role of our classes. People in the field, if they died, they wanted us to rebuff them. Now they just pop a pot and move on. So you kind of taken a lot of our class away from us, our one ability.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at. Is you took the uniqueness, some of the uniqueness away from the class. Heroism pots started to do that. They were good in a pinch. They weren't as good as your buffs. Now they pop a supremacy pot. It's equivalent to my buffs, except for the acuity. The acuity is even better than my bots.
I'll even have people yell at me in Vent or TeamSpeak or whatever because they're on their caster, and I resed them, whatever PR, and then gave them acuity, and no, they want 11 better on their supremacy pot, and I just wasted it or whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to again take this down a little bunny path because the mini is my main class. Having horses at mini speed has taken that complete uniqueness of that class and removed it. That was one of the most unique things in the class. It's removed it. Not thrilled with it. I wish I was more necessary, but the game evolved. For me personally, as a mini, I think it's a bad thing. For the game, I think it's actually a good thing. Would you say for the game, it's a good thing or a bad thing, supremacy pots? Not for your class, but for the game.
Depends on what your purpose is. They've certainly made the game easier, and if that's what your goal, then I guess it's a good thing. And in some ways, they've reduced the need to have a buff bot. Frankly, I don't know why that's a good thing for Broadsword, but perhaps it's good for people that don't want to pay for a buff bot. I mean, I guess it would really boil down to your opinion on how changes should affect the game. Should they make it easier, or should they make it harder? And I mean, I guess I'm saying easier probably puts a more negative spin on it than if I said something like a little bit more casual and a little bit more user-friendly. That's for me the crux of the question with supremacy pots.
I have to agree with you, Joel. It's made it, I'd go with easier, and it's taken a lot of what I used to do out of the equation. It's the same with the shears. You used to shear somebody, they'd have to find their class that could rebuff them and get the buffs put back on. Now you shear them, they pop a pot, and they're right back in the action. Oh, it's basically almost turned us into heal bots, if you will.
So the big thing is it's removed a big aspect of the skill that's required to be one of these particular classes, right? Like you had to, if your people wouldn't come to you, you had to find your people. You have to know what buffs go on what people. The kind of dumbing down aspect is what it's done to the classes.
Exactly what it's done to the classes. It's made it. Used to be it took a special temperament type of person to play a cleric or druid or a shaman. Now pretty much anybody can play it because you don't have to position yourself. You don't have to really be quite as cognizant of where all your players are. You don't have to try to work in buffing, throw a buff or two, and then throw some heals, throw a buff or two. It's taken a lot of the skill out of my class, and it pisses me off.
There is some adaptations you can do to counter supremacy pots, and that is shearing single buffs of single targets and swapping between multiple targets. And it's much better now that the supremacy pot is on a 30-second reuse, because you can punish people for using it if you can re-shear them after they do it. But that doesn't change the fact that you waste a good couple seconds, and they can negate that with the press of a button, and if you can't shear them again, your time will have been wasted, except for the interrupts.
Perfect. Yeah, lovely. My opinion is that it's good for the game. I see both sides of the coin. I think it levels the playing field a little bit between maybe skill sets. But what I end up seeing is that a lot of people don't even use supremacy pots, or don't have them, or use them ineffectively. And if you want to be more efficient, there are still ways in which you can, if you want to, take your game to the next level, you can still do that. There's so many ways in which the game's never going to be on the same. People are never going to be on the same playing field, really, even sitting across watching them over the grass. So yeah, I think it's good. Just anything we can do to get more people involved in liking the game at all levels of play. So.
Well, I think the argument for a lot of people was I don't want to have two accounts in order to get buffs. And so the supremacy pots pretty much alleviated that. You get them, you buy them, they're not cheap, you whatever. They've kind of eliminated the need to have your own personal buff bot, which is a good thing. I think what Flick was saying too, if you can use your time doing something else and become more skilled at that, you could kind of look at that as perhaps, doing more shearing, doing more of something else, which brings you back to, does the shaman have anything to contribute that they can be doing that makes them, useful or more useful to a group? Very interesting discussion. I think I'm surprised. I would have thought everybody would be happy with the supremacy bots. I'm interested to see that people are not. I think that's very interesting.
I think that they're a good idea for the reasons that you cited, in that people don't need a buff bot. It does make, if you're just somebody that wants to log in for an hour or two a week, it's a nice way to just, oh, I'm fully buffed, I can go do my thing. It's the ability to use them in the fights, I think, that people are a little, perhaps, not super happy with. And there's been some ideas in chat about reuse timers or not be usable in combat that maybe they could have a look at, that really wouldn't change the fact that you could use those in lieu of a buff bot, but they don't really impact a fight as much. So.
Well, I was just going to bring this up, but Inner DAOC just brought it up. What if they made the realm buffs capped? So your little realm buff guy at the beginning, you do that, and then you have to have your normal classes for buffing you when you're out there.
That'd be really convenient, wouldn't it?
It would have to, yeah, Wyan has a point too. It would have to buff pets as well, especially for things like necros and stuff. That's a real issue. But that would make a difference.
I'd rather see them do that, take away the supremacy pot, give me back some of my roll out in the field, or put the supremacy pot on a timer if the idea was to eliminate the buff bot, you don't drag your buff bot, or most people don't drag their buff bot out in the field with them. So make the realm buffs the equivalent of a cleric buff or a druid or shaman buff, and either do away with the supremacy pots or lower their value so that these classes become a little bit more valuable again in the field.
I don't
That's
think.
it. He's right. He's right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Flick. He's right though.
I don't think supremacy pots have hindered your abilities as much as seal buffs have. I personally love supremacy pots.
I love them too. I'm all over them. Uh-oh, we lost Hanky. I think he's going to watch Walking Dead, I swear.
But the CL buffs are the things that really completely negate you.
The CL
buff completely negate me. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, Lovely. They're a lot lower of a buff than what I can give.
Not that much lower though, with the 25 buff bonus.
CL buffs are 140 for each one of your stats. Buff bot is 155. Yeah, right. It's not much lower, but you don't get a 25% on it.
Okay, I have a couple more things that I see we're getting up to the top of the hour. A few more things that I wanted to ask you guys. What do you think of the Realm Rank 5 ability that's available for your class? How do you feel about the Realm Rank 5 abilities? Anybody can.
Speaking for the Cleric, I think we have one of the best in the game, personally.
I absolutely agree.
It's great against melee, and I think it's phenomenal solo, but in the Zerg situation, personally, I think it's still good. Okay, fine.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're right. It's a thing against melee. So if you're getting nuked from somewhere, not real helpful. But I have heard from almost everybody that they think the Realm Rank 5 for clerics is great.
It is really good. It's only melee, but it's really insane against melee.
Yeah, being able to reset that stun against like a warrior or a hero it's sweet.
Now, what about the Druid and Shaman RR5s?
The Druid one is fine. It'll save your ass every once in a while. Shaman, though.
Shaman rank 5 might have been good, and this is building on what Gavin was saying about power. That might have been good at one point in the game, but it's a little dated at this point. I would say that it's not useless, but you could pop it and no one would notice. I think is if that's a pretty good barometer for judging whether it's a useful ability. It's definitely something that could be addressed. I don't know that it's super urgent. Like it's not doesn't prevent the class from getting groups by any stretch, but it's certainly not what you would call a good rank 5.
How would you improve it? What would you do to improve it?
I think you'd change it. You'd give them something else instead. I'm not quite sure what that would be. I'd have to think about that a little bit, but Shamans have no escape tool, and pretty well every other healing class has an escape tool. Wardens have a shield. They don't have an ability. But Shamans are one of the easier classes in the game to kill, and they could really use an escape tool. So I would give them something.
Like maybe like a quick insta stun or like anything that lets them
Third
get away.
rank 5.
Yeah, give them Thurgis rank 5.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
On a 5-minute reuse, though.
Yeah, 5-minute reuse.
Okay, I think we already talked about this, but aside from that that cleric, Smite Cleric heal line that was substantially nerfed, was there anything that was nerfed in your class that really had an effect on it, rather than outside influences like pots and so on? Was there anything that, I hesitate to use the word left axe, but anything that's gone that really was detrimental to your class?
I don't think so for druids, but I'm no history expert. I might not remember something or forget something. I think druids have largely been the same since day one.
And clerics had the smite heal thing taken away. And what about shaman? Anything that was great that's been nerfed at some point?
I think shamans got buffed recently with they rearranged the lines.
More than they have, yeah. I can't think of anything that was really nerfed. I mean, way back. I guess the endurance being yeah. It's not really even a nerf to the class. No, I don't think so. I think the classes have been largely static for the last, I don't know, at least half a decade, and that's probably been the biggest nerf to them, is that there's been almost zero evolution.
Well, maybe this is dating myself, but does anyone else remember the Smite Cleric nerf of like, I don't know, 2003, where beforehand they were like phenomenal DPSers?
It's probably the most overpowered class has ever been in the game, though. I don't think that's
Yeah.
I remember that too. I remember being able to, you could pretty well beat anything one-on-one with a Smite Cleric. That was a little silly.
Chain wearing, nice hits.
Well, that was before RAs were in the game too, so there was no debt or stoicism, so you could stun tanks and pretty well kill them before they could even get to you. No templates, no RAs, no spell crafting. Yeah.
Let me see. I have a couple more questions. I'm just going to say that we are going to have a game time code giveaway at the end of this, so we're kind of getting close to wrapping all this up. The chat's been flying by. I've been trying to see if there's anything that I wanted to mention that's been flying by. I did have another question. If there was anything that you could change in your class without making it crazy overpowered, what would you do? What would you give to your class that would make it more playable, make it better? It can't be ridiculous, but any ideas?
More spec points to all three.
Any rearranging of any of your lines or anything to move things that might be in one line into a different line that might make it work out better? Or
I think it would be good for shamans if some abilities on mid or on other classes were moved to shamans. Just brainstorming. The haste debuff that healers have maybe could be moved to shamans. Perhaps the Tomty hammer that healers are given access to, which doesn't really make sense considering druids and clerics have the equivalent, but shamans don't, and healers do. That could be moved to the shaman class too, just to give it a little bit more changing anything. As well as a couple potentially instant interrupt abilities. I would say an instant range disease might not be a bad boost for a shaman, as well as potentially changing the mechanics of Spirit Shell so that it could be a bit more of a useful ability. So the shaman could do other things while giving that ability to someone, and that would certainly be, probably you could spend an hour talking about what that should look like, but that would be my proposed changes to the class.
Flick, anything druids could use, like that's already available that could make them a little bit more attractive?
I don't think either druids or clerics really need anything. I think they're in a good place. I saw some complaints about the nature line. Could maybe use some things, but I think the nature line is like better than the smite and the cave line combined, so I don't necessarily agree. I don't really have anything I want for druids.
And are the clerics happy?
I am.
Good. I also have one more question. Now, we're not redoing anything with the master level lines. Nothing's being changed or anything, but they are a big part of each of the classes. So the druids can be perfectors and convokers. Same with the shaman. The clerics, perfectors and warlords. what do you think, without saying let's change all the MLs, what do you think of the accessibility of those particular ML paths to these particular classes? Are they good, bad? Would a different ML path be better?
Well, they're good because one of them is Perfector, and it's rare to see someone be anything else. You occasionally see a Convoker Druid, but on occasion. You see them more often than you see Convoker Shamans, I'll tell you that much.
I guess to me it depends on playstyle, because when you start dealing with roaming groups, Warlord and Convoker become pretty darn attractive.
Yeah, you know, having played a cleric, the warlord thing. I guess if you're a smite cleric or something, or maybe I don't know, maybe in an 8-man warlord is more attractive, but in a Zerg, warlord is borderline useless. You just can't be sitting on a ram, and I mean, and I'm just looking at the not all the other stuff, but the ability to drive a there you go. Warlord is a must for smite. Why is warlord a must for smite?
Well, I
You
think the
still
most
get
powerful
these.
is your
Go
absorb.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You can live without it. Like, I've been smite with Perfector and done just fine. It definitely has some nice tools in it that do help. Definitely the melee absorb. Even a pet scare.
Interesting. I never even thought of that. So, warlord's not as awful as I thought. That's what happens when you Zerg a lot. Any other
It's not as
comments or
awful
anything?
It's not as awful as you thought, but it's not, especially on a cleric class, unless you are a smiter, it's rarely used at all. I personally would like to see uh, all three classes be offered a third option on MLs, and I'd like to see them offered Sojo. I think it would be probably just as used as Perfector, and it would give all three classes a few more escape tools than what they have.
Interesting. So mid groups with 4 Sojourners now, if Shamans get it too.
And it would
I
give,
tell you what, I
give
get
it,
Zephyred all over the place all the time. I mean, my fights are 90% being Zephyred.
and it would give Hib and Elb a third class that had Sojo, and it would fit in a little bit, in my opinion anyway. It would, as I said, it would give you a little bit more of an escape tool. You could get into a tower, get into a keep, and be able to come back and res people from your group, or you could get into a safer spot to heal. You could reposition yourself. You could Zephyr a tank off of you. You could Zephyr a caster off of you.
Yeah, Sojourner is a
Yes.
really powerful line.
Yes, when you are one and at the receiving end of one, it's you can tell how powerful it is.
I don't
Okay,
think,
I just went.
I don't think Druid or Cleric necessarily need it. They're already fine, and I think Shaman, they do need it, but they already have like the most Sojourners in group on Midgard, so they shouldn't get it either. Just be silly.
I
Yeah,
have a question for you guys.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind, lovely question on this. So, especially for people who do some Zerging, and obviously a power font in a setup castle or tower situation is like pretty darn helpful to the not just your group but everyone around you. And you can definitely tell playing the difference between Elb and Mid, where Mid has that extra Sojo class and less Perfectors. It can be hard to find a power font. Do you see that if this were to change, do you guys see it being a lot harder to find a power font on Elb or Hib?
On Elb, I don't think so, because you get heretics and rejuve friars that also tend to spec Perfector in their ML line. I was just looking to give a little bit more diversity, a little bit of uniqueness to the class.
I think what often happens too is in Zergs, most heals stand in pretty much the same place. So there's usually like 4 or 5 fops dropped in the same place rather than people spreading them out. So I don't think it would hurt it. I mean, it's not really something that's on the table to do anyway. This was just more me being curious about stuff. But I don't think it would hurt it terribly, to be honest with you. Just from a Zerg perspective, not from anything else. And I think Kuji's looking for a date with Mac. No, I'm kidding.
Do you live in Georgia, Mac? That's the question that's being asked in chat.
No.
No, Oklahoma.
No. There you go.
So, do we have any more questions or comments from my guys in the vent channel? And then we'll see if we have any more in the chat, and then we'll do the lotto. Anything else you'd like to say?
Can come up with some questions. We've had some great comments from Gavin, who's made some really cool suggestions. It'd be nice if some other people would cowboy up and ask some questions or put some interesting stuff forward.
Anybody have any questions you'd like to ask our panel?
Or any advice for Babin as she levels. Like, you can offer that too.
I didn't die. This is a first.
I want to know about this hack on here that says Happy Valentine's Day. How did that happen?
Isn't it cute?
I tell you. Okay, we've got Rad saying, how do you feel about Shaman getting a pet in the cave spec line?
Be really powerful.
And kind of the same thing, SCH Shatoni, a minstrel charm, which again would be a pet. Same thing.
Would be even more powerful. Maybe even too much so.
Personally, I'd settle for like an AoE snare and an AoE maz or something like, you know, the clerics or druids have in their offlines.
Here's an interesting question.
Interesting idea. Sorry, go ahead, lovely.
No, answer the question. I'm trying to get this before it scrolls off. Go ahead, finish.
Gavin actually had a really cool suggestion, which is related to the Shaman rank 5, and whether that could be something related to it. So you would have a pet on a timer, and I think that you could do some really cool things with that in terms of what that would actually look like when implemented. So maybe that's something that the powers that be could discuss a little bit more more closely, because that's a really neat idea.
Let's see. DAOC said about feel like shamans need something to help them survive, interrupt.
Yeah, they're definitely a vulnerable class.
I mean, a couple of instant spells would help that a little bit. Obviously not if they're unable to mitigate the damage, but I don't, again, that would probably be more to do with a rank 5, because that's typically your survival tool on classes.
Think shamans should get an RR5 that reduces damage taken for a few seconds. One of the other suggestions, Rad, was some kind of stun mez, give them more escapability rather than rather than just reducing damage. I guess that could be considered giving them a little bit more escapability.
Yep,
yeah,
the
that's a
current
good
rank 5 is fairly outdated, as has been stated. Something along those lines would go a long way for the class.
A lot of people have brought this up in for all 3 classes, is give people some more points to put into lines. What do you all think of that?
I would say you'd have a very big issue with druids if you gave them a bunch more spec points. Perhaps clerics too. I'm maybe not as much, but giving shamans more spec points. I don't really know what else you'd gain. So you can get a better greater heal. I mean that's nice, and you can get some other abilities from cave. Again, that's nice, but I don't think it affects the root of the problem, which is that their abilities are more or less redundant. Making them slightly better doesn't make them less redundant. I mean, you can go
Okay,
50-50-50
any other
on the
questions?
shaman. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Any other questions from the folks that are in Twitch? Any other questions you want to throw out to the panel? Less comment type things, more questions. Anything you want to ask these guys?
It looks like the chat is in unison that more spec points are needed.
There you go.
I'd be kinda interested in an insta-DD in the smite line for clerics. Like Taints get.
That's a cool idea. That's a cool idea.
Would kinda make it worth like split specking a little more in 8v8 if you get a low level version of that as an insta rep.
Here's an interesting one. Give shamans RR5 like clerics with a root instead of a stun. Would you want that still like against just melee?
Interesting question. I suppose that if it was, if it affected pets as well, that's actually not. That's an interesting idea.
I think melee, but just pets. I guess from a coding perspective, I don't know. It would seem like it'd be a lot harder to code the spell damage effect.
Yeah, I would not be able to speak on that. So, I guess that's always a limitation as well, is what can they do versus what should.
Yeah, Morby also made a comment. Having a better RR5 as a shaman still isn't going to make you more groupable. It's going to help you as a player, but it's not going to make people want you in their group unless it's something that affects an entire group.
Yes and no, because
well, like a thug
again,
RR5, yeah.
It gets back to that indispensable versus nice option, like nice debate, right? Like, if you have shamans get some really crazy good rank 5 situations where you might want the shaman in the group, but again, it might not make them indispensable, but it might make them a little bit more desirable for groups. I think they still do get
True.
Groups more than most classes.
This is why we don't let you guys do stuff. Look at all this stuff that people are coming up with. Give them warlock chambers. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Beeb, if you want to do the roll for the game time code.
Wait, I'm gonna die.
Mwahaha.
Okay, let me just get back to McMelts up.
Just guys,
I think you
type
have a
1 in
stalker.
chat if you want Babin to sing. That's the secret.
That's not happening. You don't want that.
I want to hear you sing. Yeah, we got a 1 going. There comes another one.
No, that's Joe. That one doesn't count.
You got problems, Beebs. Here they come.
If we get to 26, Babin, you have to sing. I mean...
No,
Oh
I can't hear you guys. And my Twitch chat is lagged out. No, I don't know what's going on. Sing the Dark Age Camelot theme song? But that doesn't have any words.
Does it have words?
If you can sing the Flute Man song, then I think the Twitch chat will be happy. I mean...
No,
We
I'll
to-
give away a
Lovely's
time
Hermaine's a
code to
minstrel.
keep him
She'll
happy.
probably like it. And you have to give everybody
Yeah,
a
I'll,
time code.
I'll pull out my harp and you can sing along.
With enough beers, everything has words to it.
Exactly.
Well, this is a bit off topic, but we discussed it earlier. Apparently there's 52 Hibs. In a BG, Herorius is not on, and they're all at Bolg, so I'm super pleased right now. Maybe some 3 realm action again.
Well, you know, maybe they saw what fun it was last night, and if they can get their folks together, I mean, it would just be amazing if we got back to 3 realm action.
Yeah, somebody posted earlier in Facebook that they were running are going to try to run a Hibzerg tonight.
It's there.
Excellent.
Awesome, that would be great.
Well, and you know, before we wrap this up, if you are a person that wants to play Hib and you do have people stepping up to try and lead, give them a chance. Like, you know, don't log the first time you lose a fight. Like, stay out there, give these folks a chance. They're stepping up, they're trying to get the realm going. Do it. Okay, Beebs, whenever.
Okay. Alright, for the time code giveaway, I'm just gonna I'll give you a keyword. You'll have to type the keyword in the chat, and you got about 70. I usually give it a minute, but there is a default delay in Twitch, so we might go to maybe 75 seconds or something instead. But after that, and after I roll and I the thingy on the screen will pick a winner, you have roughly about 30 seconds to claim it. So keep your eye, if you're in, keep your eye out for it. I'm gonna paste this as well in the chat. Okay, so it's in order of Valentine's Day. The keywords tonight is exclamation mark love, all small letters, and you need the exclamation mark. So you 60 seconds roughly. So go. Well, let's go. And I just want to say thanks to the everyone for tuning in, for watching, and to the guys for stepping up and getting on the podcast and chatting. It was really informative.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to you guys for stepping up and doing this. I think you did a really good job. Thank you. And I'm just taking a little look here. The next one is February 27th, and that's going to be an EU podcast. Is that correct?
No, that's a 21st. It's one.
21st. I'm sorry, I can't read apparently. So February 21st, it's an EU podcast. Wizard, Rooney, Eldritch, and Heretic.
Yeah, and we need people to come for that. So, I mean, we're going to be heavily searching for people, but if there's anyone in the event or anyone in Twitch chat who wants to get involved for next week's one, it is an EU timed one, which means that it is at 2 p.m. EST, 7 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. Central European Time. But if you're available and can speak for one of those classes, please let me know. Okay, I'm going to hit stop on this.
I'm cracking up. Look at Gavin thought I was you and you were me. That's awesome, Beeps.
It's like the
You're
accent, you know. Ooh. Yeah, no problem. I'm putting so much work into this podcast. Oh, look, Joel. Okay, I'm going to ignore Joel and I'm going to roll for the winner of the podcast. So the winner is.
The Scottish lady. Oh, there's trouble.
He does it on purpose. So, okay, congrats to Tal Narash. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ooh, nice. Grats.
So, are you here, Tal Narash? Say something in chat if you're. Oh, okay,
There he is.
Timon, yay! Yeah, okay, yeah, you have to say it in chat so it stops, yeah, counting down and everything. And it does go a few seconds over because of the Twitch delay by the time I say go when it comes through on your screen. So, congratulations. Send me, not a whisper, but a private message to Yay Carol on here. Or if you're on Postcan to Bevan, or if you're in IRC to Bevan, either of them.
Anna, thank you to everybody that tuned in and stayed here with us and asked all your questions and suggestions and stuff. That was awesome. We had over 50 throughout the podcast.
We had over 60 at one point, I think the peak.
Very nice.
Um, I don't know, Torm. Also, sorry for cutting you in OVR with the Zerg last night.
What's that,
Stop
Bevan?
smiting for this.
Excellent. Okay, I got a hold of. I'd also send a special thank you to Age for kill stealing while I was trying to level up. Appreciate that.
What level did you get to?
My Enchantress, Bevelicious, got to 11.
Well, it's not bad in an hour and a half. Very nice.
No, and I was AFK and running away from things most of that as well.
Thanks, guys.
Alright, thanks everyone. Keep an eye on Postcan and Facebook for information, but really do get in touch if you can. Join in for next week's EU timed podcast for Wizard, Eldritch, Brewmaster, and Heretic. Okay, thanks all. Bye.
Night, night, guys.